The story behind this submersible is much darker than one might imagine. And we will dive into the mysterious final moments on board. The experts lied. Stay with us and be amazed by the scale of the secrets revealed. Titan wreckage images were shown, taken 4 days after the accident, using specialized equipment. The tail section was found over 12,000 feet deep. These images were obtained using specialized remotely operated equipment 4 days after the accident. U.S. Coast Guard representatives showed a photo where you can see the tail section of the vessel stuck on the ocean floor at a depth of over 12,000 feet. In addition, the participants in the proceedings were shown an animated video recreating the submersible's trajectory from the start of its descent to the moment communication was lost. Official comments emphasize that this material serves as undeniable evidence of the catastrophic incident. The submersible's dive began on June 18, 2023, at 9:17 a.m. from the deck of the ship Polar Prince. During the descent, the ground team periodically maintained contact with the Titan crew. At the same time, communication was interrupted at times, and messages were transmitted from the submarine about temporary failures in the system. The crew reported stabilization. 2 ballast weights were released, then communication was lost. At that time, 2 ballast weights were released from the submersible. After that, communication was completely lost. At that moment, the Titan had already reached a depth of 10,978 feet. According to the U.S. Coast Guard investigation, this episode was the last successful contact between the Titan and the support vessel before complete communication was lost. The chief engineer of the submersible, Titan, Tony Nissen, refused to manage the vessel and dive, citing distrust of OceanGate's team. Lightning struck the submersible, potentially causing damage. Nissen canceled a 2019 Titanic expedition, warning head-Stockton rush of apparatus issues. "I'm not going there," Nissen said at the time. Yet, Rush insisted on a quick launch. "I'm not going there," Nissen said at the time. Nevertheless, according to him, Rush kept insisting on launching the submersible as soon as possible. David Lockridge said OceanGates had rejected safety gear despite survival kits. He shared a story about how an OceanGate executive disparaged the installation of rescue equipment on board a submersible, calling it a waste of money. Lockridge showed Rush and other board members emergency kits containing protective gear, food and water supplies that could ensure the crew's survival in the event of an emergency. Rush walked past me with other executives and said, "We're not putting all that on the Titan," Lockridge recalls. The expert stressed that the Titan was considered an experimental vessel that had not undergone sufficient testing and could pose a threat to passengers. He was also concerned about the presence of regular tourists on board who had no experience with submersibles. "I know that according to Stockton's ideas, anyone can become a pilot by training with a game controller. But that's far from the truth," Lockridge concluded in his testimony in court. "And what if you get into a car accident in America and don't know what to do next? Where to turn for help? Where can I find a competent lawyer? How can you get compensation if you don't have insurance?" The car accident company, Accident America, helped secure $21 million in compensation for its clients. They'll definitely answer all your questions here. Link in the description. Tim Catterson, an OceanGate employee who was on board the Polar Prince at the time of the tragedy, expressed the opinion that the depressurization of the Bathyscaphe could have occurred along the line of attachment of the block with the porthole to the hull, and not due to the destruction of the window itself. He believes that the passengers had no idea of the looming danger. The people on board had no idea what could happen. "I want to emphasize that none of them experienced any suffering. They expected the Titanic," Catterson said. He also rejected the suggestion that the release of ballast before the accident could have indicated an emergency on board and an attempt by the crew to quickly rise to the surface. Instead, Catterson proposed the theory that the ballast was jettisoned to slow down the submersible's approach to the Titanic, ensuring a gentle contact with the ocean floor. There were 2 billionaires on board. I think Stockton wanted to do everything perfectly. The relatives of the deceased, however, are convinced that the passengers realized the inevitability of the disaster in the final moments of their lives. In August 2024, the family of the deceased French explorer Paul-Henri Nargeolet, who was part of the last expedition on the Titan, filed a lawsuit against the submersible's manufacturer, OceanGate. The family is seeking compensation of at least $50 million, claiming that the passengers suffered, knowing about their impending doom. They acknowledge that the Titan's crew likely realized what was happening. The acoustic safety system would probably have alerted them to cracks in the carbon fiber under immense pressure, which should have prompted the pilots to jettison ballast and try to stop the descent. The lawsuit suggests that the crew members likely understood their fate while they were still alive. The acoustic safety system would likely have alerted them to cracks in the carbon fiber under immense pressure, which should have prompted the pilots to jettison ballast and try to stop the descent. The lawsuit suggests that the crew members likely understood their fate while they were still alive. The submersible's first dive took place in 2018, and the developers claimed it was absolutely reliable and offered an unprecedented level of comfort for the crew. Despite this, the design of the submersible immediately drew criticism. OceanGate employee David Lockridge prepared a report stating that the Titan had not undergone the proper number of tests and poses a potential threat to passengers. The company sued Lockridge and subsequently fired him. The clients who paid for the trips were not informed that the mission was experimental. Later, 38 experts, including deep-sea researchers and oceanographers, sent a letter to OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush, warning him that the company's methods and refusal to follow traditional inspections could lead to tragic consequences. The question of what feelings the passengers of the submersible Titan experienced before the tragedy is also a topic of debate. One crew member on the Polar Prince doubts the porthole theory. He thinks passengers were unaware due to swift, painless events. In his opinion, the passengers were not aware of their impending death, as events developed rapidly and no one on board experienced any suffering. However, the relatives of the deceased hold a different opinion. It is believed that the expedition members became aware of their fate when the pressure at great depths began to damage the Bathyscaphe. The crew tried to jettison ballast, but they already understood that the chances of survival were minimal. These are exactly the conclusions found in the lawsuit seeking financial compensation filed by the family of the deceased French traveler Paul-Henri Nargeolet. Let me remind you that the submersible Titan was headed to the wreck of the legendary Titanic in the Atlantic Ocean. The submersible disappeared from radar on June 19, 2023. There were 5 people on board. The search involved 2 planes and 2 military ships. Among the passengers of the Titan were British billionaire Hamish Harding, Pakistani businessman Shahzada Dawood, and his son Suleiman. OceanGate founder Stockton Rush and experienced deep-sea explorer Paul-Henri Nargeolet. The wreckage of the submersible was found on June 22. Preliminary data indicated that the submersible was destroyed by an explosion at a depth of about 12,500 feet. The U.S. Coast Guard confirmed the death of everyone on board. Experts suggested that the death of the expedition members was instantaneous and painless. OceanGate is an American private company located in Everett, Washington. It specialized in providing crewed submersibles for tourism, industrial, research, and exploration purposes. The founders of the company are Stockton Rush and Guillermo Sanlang. The company was founded in 2009. Emerson Lay, founded in 2009. The company was founded in 2009. The company initially acquired the submersible Antipodes and then developed its own models, Cyclops 1 and Titan. In 2021, OceanGate started offering tourist trips on the Titan to the site of the Titanic wreck. The cost to participate in such an expedition in 2022 was $250,000 per person. The crash of the submersible Titan was the first tragic incident in the history of commercial dives in the last 35 years. This accident led to the official closure of OceanGate on July 6, 2023. Shortly after the incident, its subsidiary OceanGate Expeditions also ceased operations. After that, a notice appeared on OceanGate's website stating that all research and commercial operations were suspended. There's no information online about whether the company has resumed operations. However, it's unlikely that someone won't come along with the same ambitious goals to profit from the Titanic. While it can still be seen, Larry Connor will visit the Titanic using a 2-person submersible, the Triton 4002 abyssal explorer. He has previously gained fame for his extreme adventures, including diving into the Mariana Trench and taking part in the first tourist flight to the International Space Station. Connor decided to avoid the mistakes of his predecessors by choosing the two-person submersible Triton 4002 abyssal explorer for his journey. This craft has undergone official certification and can safely descend to depths of up to 13,000 feet, making it much more reliable than the vessel used by OceanGate. The cost of such a submersible is $20 million, but the specific prices and timelines for the upcoming dive are still unknown. Director James Cameron, noted for Titanic dives, saw similarities in events at the same site. Both times, technology's allure led to ignored safety. Cameron knew the submersible was lost and discussed this with Russian oceanographer Anatoly Sagalevich. In both cases, enchanted by the power of modern technology, the ship owners and wealthy passengers overlooked necessary safety measures. Before the wreckage was discovered, Cameron already knew that the submersible could not be saved and discussed the matter with Russian oceanographer Anatoly Sagalevich, who, like him, was acquainted with submariner Paul-Henri Narjol, who was on board the Titan. Many in our community were extremely concerned about this submersible, and leading deep-sea engineers even wrote letters to the company, warning that their actions were too experimental and needed certification. "I'm struck by the similarity of these events to the Titanic disaster," noted James Cameron. The Titanic sank on the night of April 15, 1912, taking the lives of about 1,500 people. This event remains one of the largest maritime disasters in human history, second only to military tragedies. The story of the Titanic continues to captivate scientists, researchers, and adventurers around the world. The ship is shrouded in myths and conspiracy theories. Many books have been written about it, and quite a few movies have been made. For many years, they searched for the place of his final resting. The artifacts raised from the ocean floor have become iconic objects. Now, next to the underwater memorial of the Titanic lies the Titan submersible, like a symbolic reminder that nature mercilessly and harshly punishes arrogance. Robert Ballard, the researcher who discovered the wreck of the Titanic in 1985, was the first person to explore the ship's remains using submersibles and underwater robots. After conducting 2 expeditions and making over 30 dives, Ballard announced in 1986 that he no longer plans to return to the Titanic. Like James Cameron, Ballard is a member of the New York Explorers Club, which was founded in 1904. During one of his dives, he left a plaque on the bow of the Titanic asking to leave the ship in peace. However, the Titanic never really rested in peace. Various groups of researchers and enthusiasts have repeatedly visited the crash site. And French specialists even raised several hundred artifacts from the ocean floor. Later, the crash site was declared a memorial, and the removal of items from it was officially prohibited. However, since the Titanic is in international waters, it's impossible to fully control the activity around it. Another member of the New York Explorers Club, Richard Garriott, who became the first space tourist to visit the ISS in 2004, pointed out that it was only after diving to the Titanic that he truly realized the full danger of the elements. "During the dive to the Titanic, I felt real danger for the first time. We found ourselves under the stern and were watching the wreckage when, out of nowhere, the nose of the submersible bumped into the ship itself. The water got murky, we disturbed the ruins, and suddenly we were pinned to the bottom. That's how we learned the truth about safety measures. It turned out that no matter how much ballast we jettisoned, we would never be able to make it to the surface through the wreckage of the ship. We wouldn't have been able to launch a buoy or send a radio signal. We couldn't communicate with the outside world, and we couldn't be detected under the stern. Yeah, I thought this could be my end," Richard Garriott recalled. A sinister atmosphere surrounded the Titanic long before it was even built and launched. An example of this is Greek mythology, from which the names of both the Titanic and Titan were borrowed. In it, the Olympian gods defeat the powerful Titans and cast them into the depths of the sea. Whether the tragic fates of 2 similarly named ships can be seen as the ocean's punishment for human overconfidence, or whether the cause of what happened was a simple mistake, exacerbated by unfavorable conditions, remains a matter for reflection. And that's all for today. Bye everyone.